Hello and welcome to our live stream on safe firearm storage. We're so glad you could join us. Today, we hope to provide information about evidence-based ways to keep you, your family, and your friends safe during the holiday season and year-round. I'm Kara Gavin with the Michigan Medicine Department of Communication, and I'll be your moderator for this event. I'm very fortunate to be joined by experts from the University of Michigan and the Marquette County, Michigan Health Department who can help us understand what the research says about effective, safe storage practices for firearms, the importance of trusted community messengers, and other injury prevention measures available to Michiganders. I'm also pleased to note that the Michigan Institute for Clinical and Health Research, or MICHR, is our partner for today's webinar event. MICHR, which is based here at U of M, supports translational science that focuses on extending life and reducing the impact of illness and disability. And its community engagement program serves academic and community partners statewide who have a shared interest in collaborating to improve health outcomes. And one of the projects we'll be talking about today received support from MICHR's Promoting Academic and Community Engagement program. So we'll be hearing today from two of the leaders of that project, Dr. Cynthia Ewell Foster and Sarah Derwin. Dr. Ewell Foster is a clinical child psychologist and a clinical associate professor in the Department of Psychiatry at Michigan Medicine, and her research focuses on youth suicide prevention with a focus on family, community, and systems-based interventions. She's also the director of the Community Engagement Corps at the University of Michigan Institute for Firearm Injury Prevention. Sarah Derwin is a public health educator at the Marquette County Health Department, where she leads efforts to intervene on injury prevention, substance use, firearm safety, and other things. And she serves as the project director for multiple grants focused on suicide prevention and leads the Marquette County Suicide Prevention Alliance, which fosters community and tribal partnerships across Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Sarah is also a member of our Firearm Institute's Community Advisory Board and works with Dr. Ewell Foster on the Store Safely project. And our third panelist is Dr. Stephen Oliphant, who is a postdoctoral research fellow at the Firearm Institute at U of M. And his research focuses on understanding the impacts of firearm laws and social policies on self-harm and interpersonal firearm injury. And the overarching goal of his work is to inform interventions and policies that are equitable and effective. So thank you all for joining us for this important discussion. Before we get going, a few housekeeping items for our audience. If you're watching live, feel free to submit questions at any time, and we'll select some to address during today's chat. Simply comment on the video on whatever platform you're using, but be aware that your name or your profile name will be visible to the others who are participating. If you need a more anonymous option, you can send a private message to us through the Facebook direct message function on facebook.com/Michigan Medicine. So we know that there may be many questions and we'll likely combine some that are on the same topic. And please also know that our experts can't give specific advice for an individual situation that you might be facing. And we are going to be talking about some sensitive topics today, including interpersonal violence and self-harm or suicide. So if anyone watching is having a mental health crisis of any kind or knows someone who is, please call or text 988 to reach the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. So, and if you can't stay for the whole chat or you want to share this recording with a friend afterward, you'll be able to watch after we're done through the Michigan Medicine YouTube channel. And the link will also be posted on our other social media channels for ease of access and sharing. So Dr. Ewell Foster, if you want to start getting ready to share your slides, we're having this session just as the holiday season is kicking into high gear, but we're hoping that what we share today is going to be useful year round. So we're going to hear first from Dr. Ewell Foster and Ms. Derwin talking about safe firearms storage and lessons that have been learned from the project they led in the Upper Peninsula. So please go ahead.
Thanks, Kara. Hi, everybody. I'm really so honored to be here with you all today, just to spend some time together talking about how we can be sure that the people that we love are safe as we're all gathering together this holiday season. So as we get started, I just want to wish everyone listening a wonderful holiday season. I hope it's restorative. I hope it's joyful for you. I hope you get some time to be with the people that you love. And I just want to thank you for taking a little time out of this busy time of year when you could be wrapping or shopping to think about this issue. It's not something that's usually on our radar at the holidays, but in this time of year where we have kids home from school and maybe we're going to grandparents' houses or great aunts and uncles, maybe folks who aren't used to having kids in their house, I think it's just a really nice time to pause and just think about safety and spend some time together talking about it. So thank you for giving us the opportunity. And I also just want to say a thank you to Michigan Medicine, of course, the Institute for Firearm Injury Prevention, and especially MICHR. As Kara said, we were so fortunate to be able to have this funding from MICHR that's really about supporting university community partnerships. And Sarah and I have been working together for, gosh, like 10 years now. And I've learned so much from her. I hope she's learned some things from this partnership too. It's been a wonderful just a joyful relationship and collaboration. So we're excited to share some things with you today related to that. And as Kara mentioned, we're going to talk some about Store Safely, which is a project that we developed together that is about enhancing, improving how we're storing firearms securely in rural families. But, to start off with, we just wanted to talk about this issue for all families, for all of us, regardless of where you live. If you're a city, if you're in the suburbs, if you're in a rural area, just wanted to start off with some basic reminders. So hence the slide. What are we talking about when we say safe storage? So there's a lot of different options here, as you can see. And, one of the things I learned a lot from Sarah and her community is that the way we pick how we're storing our firearms should really work with the reason that we have them, right? And how you're going to store if maybe your family only uses your firearms, a couple times a year for sport shooting, or maybe you use them for hunting is different than if own a firearm because you're worried about protection. So picking this storage solution that's right for you is really important. But I did just want to give a little bit of information that I hope is helpful universally. So one, when we say safe storage or secure storage, really the best case scenario and the one that is that we would recommend is storing our firearms with the ammunition stored somewhere else, so away from the firearm, and the ammunition is locked. And then we are locking and securing that firearm also. So that's really what we are talking about when we say safe storage. I also want to say that I think the vast majority of folks who own firearms, in this nation, take safety really seriously and are very responsible about that. But of course, when we own, we have to control who has access to this. And that's really what safe storage is about. It's about preventing unauthorized access to a firearm. And this is something that's important to me as someone who studies youth suicide prevention, and just the idea that, all of us have a role to play in keeping kids safe in our communities, keeping our communities safe. Safe storage is a way that we can all contribute to that. And the research is actually very clear that this is a really powerful intervention, and that if we are storing our firearms securely, safely, we can reduce risk for kids in our home by like 75 to 85%. And that's huge, right? That is like preventing youth suicide. That's preventing unintentional injuries. I mean, that is a tragedy when little people are finding loaded firearms and hurting themselves or someone else. It's not something that, any of us want any time of the year, especially not during the holiday season. So thank you for, just giving us some time to send that reminder. I think maybe I'll turn next to just talking some again, here's why safe storage matters. What's about keeping kids safe? I think I'll turn and just give you a couple of resources, and then we'll talk some about Store Safely. If that sounds okay. The Institute for Firearm Injury Prevention, I'm just proud to share with you all that there are so many resources available on that website. I think they're getting into chats and the internet world right now, but this is our Safe Firearm Storage Toolkit, and it gives so many resources about, whether you're a mom or a dad or a grandparent or a healthcare professional, or you work in a school, you just want more information about what is the science behind this and why are we making these recommendations. You can find all of this right here on the U of M Institute for Firearm Injury Prevention website. Store safely. Um, I just wanted to take a minute and share a little bit. And Sarah, I hope that you'll join here with me to talk about this project that we're really honored to be a part of. And again, this is a university community collaboration. Sarah and I have been working together for about 10 years, and together in collaboration with Sarah's the MICHR, the Marquette County Suicide Prevention Alliance, a huge community advisory group, about another 40 folks in the UP who gave us so much guidance and insight. We developed this intervention together. And maybe, Sarah, could I turn to you and just have you share a little bit about the history and some of what we've been doing?
Sure. That sounds great, Cindy. Thank you so much. I think when we're talking about university community collaboration, it was such a key component to listen to your community and to do it really meaningfully and authentically. And so it was something that we really took into account. So to really listen to folks in all different sectors and hear about what's important with them about firearm ownership, about firearm safety, about how you navigate that in our world with dealing with maybe other families, other parents, other people in your community. What does that look like? So I think it was a wonderful lesson, and even being from the community, doing listening sessions and talking with people, I even learned so much. You just get a really deeper and richer understanding of a lot of things behind, what motivates people to own firearms, what motivates them to store them safely, maybe some things that they do think about a lot or that they don't think about quite as much. Doing that background work, I think really gave us a really, really good idea of, maybe some opportunities and just some avenues that we could kind of continue to promote safety and, work in the community to, and do it in a way that was non-threatening and very supportive and respectful of a lot of different reasonings and lifestyles too. So that was the basis and the history, I think, of Store Safely, and we carried that through the whole way as we still are now. And I really feel like we get a lot of buy-in from people, and we get a lot of really good advice from a lot of different, firearm owning groups and sporting associations, because I really do think that they can see, that kind of background work that we're putting in with Store Safely. So it's something that I'm very, very proud of that we've been doing, and the bonuses we get to work in specifically in my community right now, but a lot of promise for this to even go further.
Yeah, I'll share a few other things just for the audience that this initiative came out of a project that Sarah was leading that was funded by our state's SAMHSA Youth Suicide Prevention Grant. So thank you to MDHHS for that funding. But what was really interesting is Sarah was, leading a public health approach to suicide prevention in the UP. And, we know that in rural areas in the United States, we're seeing some pretty alarming increases in suicide, and they're often firearm related. And so Sarah was really working on trying to address this issue in her community. And what we were finding is that maybe what had been developed in other communities wasn't working quite as well in our rural areas. And, we learned a lot about the important role that firearms play in family and community life in our rural areas, and really learned a lot about how to tailor interventions that science says say work safe storage is an effective evidence-based intervention, but if you're not using it, it's not going to keep your kids safe. And so how can we, folks like me in a university partner with Sarah and her network to figure out how to get that information into the hands of people so we can really use it? And so what was exciting is that this incredible engagement in the community, and people really told us, you know, who's credible to you? Who's a credible messenger? Who, is a mom, a dad, a grandpa in Michigan's UP? Who do you want to hear from to talk about firearm safety? And like, no surprise, it's not me. Who do you want to learn from? And what should the message say? What should the educational content say and not say? And then like, what is the best way to reach people, right? So we got all this information with Sarah's help from the community. And I think another really important piece for me that I learned was just how important it is to honor our collective, as a society, our collective values about keeping our kids safe and wanting our kids to have, these experiences with family and culture. And of course, in rural areas, that often has to do with firearms. You can see these pictures that are actually from Marquette, or folks that we've been working with on our project. Hunting is just a huge part of the culture there. So really wanting to reflect that in our intervention. So I just wanted to show you guys just a snippet of how we did that. You can see the hunter's orange and the green, and this is a video in the woods of a grandpa and a dad who live in the UP, who are giving some messages to families about safety. And we chose these messengers because the community told us this is who teaches about safety in our community, and we really honor and respect the way firearm safety is passed down through generations. So maybe that's the same, for folks who are listening to, that it's your dad or your grandpa or your grandma that taught you about this. But we're excited to be offering this to the community. We did do a pilot study and had some really promising results. Some statistically significant increases in the number of firearms in a home that were locked, before and after the intervention. So we were really happy about that. And people told us they did a whole lot of different things to make their homes safer. They went out and got gun locks or storage boxes, thinking about that first slide that we showed, or they moved their ammunition away from their firearm. They took firearms out of the house and took them up to deer camp, things like that. So we loved all of those solutions. There's many things we can be doing to get our homes safer. And we're really happy to have been refunded by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So if anyone is on the stream today who lives in the UP, this may be coming to a community near you, in the next year. So yeah, I think that's our spiel about Store Safely, Kara.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And so the intervention really is messaging delivered to people who may be firearm owners, that is delivered by trusted messengers about the importance of safe storage and then the impact if they do store safely. So that's fantastic. But that's definitely one part of it. The other part in this slide you're showing epitomizes this idea that we also have people whose children might be going to a friend's house, right, and spending time at a house where there are firearms, and the parent whose child is going over may be wondering, well, how do I know if there are firearms there, and if they're being stored safely, if my child's going to be there? So maybe, Sarah, would you talk with us? This is a time when winter break's coming up, kids are going to be going over and spending time at their friends' houses. What are some of the things you advise when a parent, wants to broach that, maybe with another parent they don't know so well, about, making sure that their child is going to a place where firearms are stored safely?
Definitely. We have a lot of community discussions about this, and, we talk with a lot of our parent groups of very littles, and as you see on this screen, sometimes it's when you have really little ones, you can go over a lot and you are in really good communication with the parents, and you can talk about allergies and, a lot of different things, and the pickup and the drop off and that. And then when the kids get older, it seems like that kind of decreases a little bit. So sometimes we really try to say to really kind of channel, those conversations conversations and how you can sometimes push past some of that awkwardness that you did when they were little, and that those safety features can still be there, but just in a really conversational tone. I know I just heard some coworkers literally in the break room last week talking about how their parents were there was a really good sale on gun safes at Menards, which is a local retailer of ours, and that the parents were getting all their adult children gun safes for them for Christmas. And and then I could hear the conversation going on, and someone said, "Oh, a gun safe. Wow, here's how we store ours, and like we're really big of keeping ammunition in a different place, but we have to make sure temperature is right." And I could just kind of hear this conversation really kind of coming out very organically, and it started just with talking about the holidays and kind of post-hunting season up here, and just kind of putting it out there. We've had other parents really tell us too that just in that one-on-one parent conversation that they'll kind of in a really sweet way, but they'll throw their kid under the bus, and they'll say a way for me to kind of normalize it is to say, you know what, like my 13-year-old, he is a master at getting into every nook, cranny, and crevice of this house. So I don't want, I know you all probably store everything safely, but I would just, we don't really own guns. So I just wanted to make sure if my nosy kid is in your house that, that, and kind of putting it on them a little bit. And so we always really like that tip too, that we're not, maybe making that other family or those other parents feel like right on the defensive, that we're just kind of saying that, maybe our kids would get into places that they shouldn't be getting into. So just wanted to double check, where you're storing your firearms, and that kind of thing too. So that's always been really, kind of helpful of a bit of that norming of starting to keep talking about it.
And that could work also if you're going to, say, an older relative's house where they don't have kids around all the time, and so before you spend Christmas Eve and Christmas Day at Grandma's house, and to have that conversation and say, right, my kid might be poking around looking for Christmas presents that are stored somewhere, but can we make sure also that at least ammunition is separate from the firearms and things are locked? So yeah, and. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to jump in, Kara, and say, we have a colleague at the School of Public Health at the University of Michigan who's doing a project thinking about safe storage for parents of young kids. And one of the things that she has taught me is this idea that just what Sarah was saying, kids are going into the nooks and crannies in your house. That's where they play hide and seek. Right? They're going under the bed. They're going in the closet. And so places where you might think, especially if you haven't had a kid living in your house for a number of years, that you might think is a dusty place under your bed that nobody goes, but your 4-year-old grandchild is going to go there, over the holidays. And so I think, just really, really thinking about that. And, the other thing I just want to overlay is that, my hope is that conversations like this become no different than saying, my kid has celiac and he's gluten-free, or my kid has a peanut allergy, just like our dear friends at Hopkins, put that graphic together for us. So thank you to them. But my child has a peanut allergy, or when your teenager leaves the house and they're a new driver, and you have a conversation with them about going the speed limit and being safe. So, wear your bike helmet when you're riding your bike. So it really is just about safety and keeping the people that we love safe.
Fabulous. Great. I want to give Stephen a chance to talk. So we all have been talking about safe storage and how critical that is to increasing safety, but there's some other tools in the toolbox of preventing injury and suicide that we can talk about. And earlier this year, several new laws went into effect across Michigan that have a goal of preventing firearm injuries and deaths, including suicides in people of all ages, not just kids. So Stephen, could you go a little bit into what those new laws are, and maybe a little bit about how they came to be and what they involve and what impact they are having, if you have that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that you referred to these as tools, because that's a really good way to think of them under this broader umbrella of strategies that we have to reduce firearm deaths. So I'll highlight 3 of the main policies that took effect recently. So these were measures that were drafted by lawmakers in the wake of the Oxford High School shooting, with input from hunting families and families of survivors. And then they were passed in the spring of 2023 in the aftermath of the mass shooting tragedy at Michigan State. And so one of the changes is changes to background check requirements and licensing for firearm purchases. So under Michigan's new law, it generally requires a person to have a purchaser license, which involves a background check if they're going to purchase a firearm. And I say generally because there are exceptions, and there are different requirements depending on the seller and if the buyer has a concealed pistol license. One of the other big changes, which is I think maybe most relevant to what we're talking about, is the new safe storage law, or it's often called a child access prevention law. So this requires gun owners to safely store firearms if a minor is present or if they're likely to be present. And these kind of laws vary across states depending on a number of factors, like what constitutes a minor. And in Michigan, that's under the age of 18 years. And for safe storage in Michigan, what that means is locked in a lockbox or unloaded and locked using a locking device that basically makes the firearm inoperable. So think like a cable or a trigger lock. And so with this new law, Michigan joined 25 other states that have child access prevention laws. And these are states in the Midwest like Wisconsin. Illinois has had a law since I think 2000 maybe. Minnesota and Iowa, these are states that have had longstanding safe storage laws. And then there are other states like Texas and Florida that have had laws since the early 90s. So the one other thing I'll note with this law is that licensed dealers are required to provide a trigger lock or a gun case with the firearm sale. So that's just another component to help increase the likelihood that someone's going to store their firearms safely. And then the last law that I briefly want to talk about, the last policy change, is extreme risk protection order, or red flag laws. So I'll probably refer to this as an ERPO law just out of habit, which is the acronym ERPO. So an ERPO is a civil court order that temporarily restricts a person's access to firearms if they're at risk of harming themselves or harming others in the near future. It's important to highlight two things about these. These are civil orders, so it's not a criminal order from the court, and they're also not permanent. They're meant to be temporary measures to prevent firearm harm. And so the purpose of an ERPO is really to intervene when a person can reasonably be expected to seriously injure themselves or someone else. And that level of risk, that's based on acts or substantial threats that have been made. So these are cases where someone's threatening suicide or to harm others, or even mass shootings. So essentially, ERPOs are mechanisms to temporarily decrease a person's access to firearms in times of crisis. And I just want to just briefly mention a couple of things about the process without going too much into depth, but there are protections in the ERPO process to make sure that that these are not being filed frivolously, so that there's actually a serious risk of harm here. So there are penalties if someone makes false statements in a complaint. And then also, if someone is subject to an ERPO, they have an opportunity to appear in the court hearing and participate and have a lawyer present. And they also have opportunities to file motions to have that order be vacated or modified during the process.
And that's great. So if someone is worried about a loved one, what is the first step toward filing an ERPO? Is it calling the police in that locality? Yeah,
so both the police and family members are authorized to petition for an ERPO. So depending on someone's comfortability with being the person to file it, that's obviously perfectly okay. Or if they would feel more comfortable with getting law enforcement involved, for them to help with the petition, or for law enforcement to file it, that is also okay. And so on our website, firearminjury.umich.edu, there's an an ERPO toolkit, which has a lot of information about the process and the information that would need to be in the petition, and just some advice or some helpful information about how to go about filling out a petition and when it may be appropriate to file an ERPO.
And while we're on the subject of law enforcement, I understand that a lot of law enforcement agencies have free gun locks available for the asking. And so I think it's important to note that if someone's thinking about doing safe storage, maybe they're not able to get to Menards to get the gun safe just yet, but going to the police station and getting a gun lock so that they secure their firearm when they're having visitors over, that would be a quick and easy thing to do, correct? Great. So, we've been talking about the holidays a bit. The holidays can be stressful, right? And especially if someone's alone or they're grieving the loss of a loved one or they've lost a job or they have other financial stress. Maybe Cindy, start with you. What's the connection? What do we know about the connection between these feelings of stress and loneliness and sorrow and grieving and suicide risk, especially when there is a firearm present? And we've talked about ERPO, and what else can someone do if they're worried that someone who has access to firearms might be at risk, especially at this time of year?
Thank you for that question, Kara. And I'm so glad that we've held some space for this today because, I think many people think of the holidays as just a joyful time, right? Just a time to be together. But there are folks for whom the holidays are really difficult. And it could be for a lot of different reasons. They've had, challenges in their family, or they've had a loss, as you mentioned, or, they were struggling with mental health issues, or maybe, they'd like to be with their kids, but they're not because there's been a divorce. So many reasons why the holidays can be tough. And, I guess I have a couple things I want to say about that. If there is someone in your family or in your social network that you are worried about during this holiday time, please don't hesitate. There is nothing wrong with asking people how they are doing. It is an evidence-based approach. You're not going to put any ideas in someone's head by asking if they're thinking about suicide. Survivors tell us all the time that when someone notices that they're in pain and in distress and actually asks about it, it's a tremendous relief for people. So just saying something like, hey, I really care about you, and I notice that you seem really down, or I know this is the anniversary of your mom's death. Like, I just want to check in, see how you're doing. So that is a beautiful and wonderful thing to do. And I really encourage folks to do that. I think if you have information that someone is, in fact, thinking about suicide or thinking about ending their lives, one of the most impactful things we can do for them is to be sure that they don't have access to a loaded firearm. And what we talk about in mental health circles or public health circles is creating protective environments around people. It's just about making sure that the environment is keeping you safe. And it's really not any different than what we were talking about before when we were thinking about kids, right? Who could be vulnerable to getting hurt. And if someone is in distress, they're also vulnerable to getting hurt. And certainly we wouldn't like them to have access to anything that they might be thinking about using to end their lives, but particularly firearms. The reason I care so much about that is because they are so lethal. And if someone is in distress and they get their hands on a firearm, those of us in mental health don't get a second chance to get them some help and get them moving towards recovery. So it's about putting time and distance between people who are in distress and something that they could use to harm themselves. Then if you've heard me talk before, I say this a lot, so forgive me if it's redundant, but I hear a lot this idea that if someone wants to end their lives, they're going to do it, and it doesn't matter if there's a firearm there or not. And that simply isn't true. The data doesn't bear that out. If someone is in a really difficult place and they don't have easy access, they're not going to keep trying. They don't try again. Most people who've made really medically serious suicide attempts are still here. 95% of those people are still here 20 some years later because they don't keep trying. So, the safest option in that situation of someone that you really care about, you're concerned about their risk of self-harm, is to move that firearm to out-of-home storage temporarily during a psychiatric crisis. The hope is that it's pretty similar to giving your buddy your keys when you've had too much to drink. It's a temporary thing, and when you're feeling better, you get your keys back, you get your gun back. But certainly there are families that I've worked with in my career where we've done all those things and we've talked about those things, and that person really is struggling with the idea of getting rid of their firearm. And for those families, I'm very grateful that we have ERPO now in our toolbox, because it is just another support for moms who are worried about their adult children, or spouses who are worried about their partners. Certainly not the only thing that we want to do. We've got a whole, number of things that are helpful. Again, I want to reiterate that 988 is there for anyone. If you can call if you're just worried about someone and get some guidance about what to do. So that's, a really wonderful resource.
That's great. Can we talk a bit more about the out-of-home storage? Because I don't think we've touched on that. We've talked about safe storage in the home. What are some options for out-of-home storage? And I don't know if Stephen, you want to address that, or Cindy?
Or Sarah.
Yeah. Or Sarah, yeah.
Sydney, I might send it to you. The only other thing I wanted to mention about an ERPO is that it can still be an effective tool if someone is planning to access a firearm, even if they don't currently have one, because it does make them ineligible temporarily for that purchase. So it doesn't have to only be someone who currently owns a firearm.
Great point. Thank you so much.
Sarah, I know we've been working on these options for out-of-home storage, and I don't know if you have anything you want to say about how that works in your community.
Sure. I think out-of-home storage is definitely an option. Sometimes in our communities that can be an option that has maybe a little bit of hesitancy once it leaves your home. What does that look like? So like if I rented a storage unit, can I put it in there? And, even up here, issues with temperature and that sort of thing. So even maybe sometimes leaving them at my deer camp over the winter, that I keep locked up, so it definitely, I think, takes a little bit of kind of research ahead of time. It would be something that you would want to plan out and make some calls and talk to some, there's departments here that would not, like police departments that would not take, temporarily store firearm just for liability and kind of space issues of not having the room to put that there. So definitely check in with your local municipalities of, kind of, what options do I have and what is, legal to do. There are some storage units. I know I looked into one around here that you could do that, and it's temperature controlled. So that definitely could be an option if I'm worried and I just really need to get it out of the house. So definitely kind of making some calls and finding out what you can and can't do in your community would be really helpful.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Sarah, while we've got you unmuted, I wanted to move to a topic that I know is important in the Upper Peninsula and a lot of Michigan, which is hunting and firearm safety related to hunting. And we just came off of the main deer season. There's another one coming up. And can you talk about this time of year for firearm safety discussions related to hunting, and where hunting is such a part of the family's building of happy memories and intergenerational activity, and maybe to talk about what you know about that.
Sure. Yeah, we're just coming off of deer hunting season up here, and we were joking around with a coworker that this is the time where you start exchanging your venison summer sausage with other people. So when you go over to houses, you're able to give that. Everybody's gotten their meat back from the processor. So it's definitely something that people are still talking about, and it's going to be part of conversation. Sometimes what we remind our families up here too is that especially families with teenagers that hunt, is that those teenagers will typically tell us, when I go into high schools, they'll tell us that I know where the firearms are stored and I have access to them because I use them. So sometimes when we work with those parents and we say, you might have a house full of teenagers over, or your teen in particular might be going through something tough, kind of having that remembering that your teen could and probably does in a lot of places up here have access to those firearms. So how could you, like Cindy was saying, how can you just temporarily maybe modify that during that time, or understanding I have a house full of teenagers that are all in my basement and I know that my teen could open up our gun cabinet. They know where we keep the key. So kind of what does that look like in these high traffic times? Or I have my family coming up from downstate, and those kids, may not know as much about firearms, but my teenagers do. So it's really a really good time, and you can bridge it. What we say, we bridge it with talking about hunting season, right? I know, like, my dad always cleans all the guns after hunting season. And I remember him saying the other day, the best place I do is I lay down towels and I keep them all on my bed. And then he said, I forgot I had the younger grandkids coming over. Like, I gotta do something with that, but it was right after, hunting season in November. So, just kind of some of those key check-in reminders of, who has access to your house, who's coming over, and then some of those conditions, like especially with those teenagers, are they okay? Did they just break up with somebody? Are they having a tough time in school? And, sometimes some of us might know more than others, but, just any teen that enters your house, then too, there might be a lot of unknowns. So just doing that really good double check, that double inventory of kind of almost like your smoke alarms. Where are all my smoke alarms, and are all the batteries and they're good to go? It's like kind of remembering to do that, especially around this time with your firearms.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And for those who hunt, I hope if you're going to get out there for the next hunting season, good luck to you. And I think, we also, know that hunting is such a special thing for people in hunting families. And how do we, talk about the memories we're making together, maybe the heirloom firearms that are being passed down, and also bring safety into that. So I don't know if you want to touch on that at all.
I think the heirlooms are a really important part too. And I was really glad that Stephen mentioned about talking about, with the laws and how cable locks or trigger locks are mandated to be given out without new purchases. But some of those old ones, and I know some of our families were saying, I got these heirlooms and I certainly didn't get cable locks with them back in the, 40s and 50s. And so that's where we really sweep in public health wise and say, we've got them, we've got a lot of different, variety of options for your needs, or talking with those families about, those heirlooms. In a lot of cases, we're probably taken care of very well and could still very well be operational too. So, making sure that we have those additional resources to be able to provide families with some of those gifted items, and going over some of the safety features with some of them too, because they can be very different than, more modern firearms.
And this is that time of year, right, to sort of, connect with your grandparents and talk about the hunt that just happened, and building that connection between generations. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So hunting is one. And before I keep going, we certainly would love to hear from audience members. If you have a question, please do type it into the comments on the platform that you're on. If you want to be anonymous, go to facebook.com/Michigan Medicine, and you can send us a direct message, and we're monitoring those as well. So the other topic that I think we wanted to ask, and somebody submitted a question about this, is more about firearm ownership for safety and self-defense, and ready access in case of whatever instance comes up. And so are there tips for specific for folks who are owning firearms for that purpose?
Yeah. I'm happy to try to address that. Before I do just want to slide back to the heirloom firearms, because it's also a wonderful reminder. We have a colleague in Colorado who has been working really hard on developing interventions for adult children to have conversations with their elderly parents who are firearm owners. Here in Michigan, we actually have some concerning rates of firearm mortality in our elderly population. And so that's just another place we don't want to forget to be having conversations, those of us who are adult children, with our parents about safety, and obviously if there's concerns about dementia or other kinds of well-being, and your parents have firearms, it's time to have those conversations, those of us who are adult children. So that, another reminder. Gosh, we're giving you all a big to-do list today with the holidays, right? Aren't we? But back to the issue of owning for protection. And we know that a lot of firearm owners in the United States, that's really their primary reason for owning is, in the case of a household intruder or some other kind of protection concern. And I just want to send a big thank you right now to the Community Advisory Board at the Institute for Firearm Injury Prevention. They are awesome. They have so much knowledge. And we sent this question, thank you to whoever sent this question in last week. We sent this question out to them. So I got answers from folks who are, retired military, have done firearm safety training for the FBI, other law enforcement agencies, someone who is a competitive firearm shooter. So these folks really know what they're talking about, and they have great information. I just want to let folks know that there are many options. Going back to that, that first, slide about picking your storage for the reason that you're owning. And there are options available for you if your primary reason for ownership is protection. So there are pistol storage devices that have a super quick, like a 4-digit code, or you can do a fingerprint, or you can do a handprint and a 4-digit code. So things that you can do very quickly in the middle of the night, but you are still able to keep that firearm locked and secured. So I really welcome folks to look into that. I will say that one of the folks on our community advisory board, I think, had a really wonderful caution, which is, if some of the most important things to have by the side of your bed in the middle of the night are your phone to call 911. And if you're sleepy and it's dark and you hear a noise and you're not quite awake yet, maybe the first thing you want to reach for is not a loaded weapon. And this person, told a story about being really grateful that his mom didn't have a loaded weapon when he got caught sneaking into the house when he was in high school. So just remembering, again, kids are home for the holidays. So we just really want to be thoughtful. Another recommendation that folks had was using residential keypad locks on a closet. So, keeping your firearms in a closet and installing, those kinds of, like you would have on your garage door, something like that. So I thought these were great ideas. Many options out there to keep your family safe and have you feel like your needs are being met.
That's great. I'm so glad you were able to send that question to the advisory board. That's wonderful. Thank you to everybody who serves on that advisory board.
Yeah.
And we actually had a question, Stephen, maybe you could address this a little bit more about this idea of gun lock mechanisms being required or provided when someone's purchasing a firearm in Michigan now. So this is a part of the new law that took effect in February, correct? Oh, you're muted. Yes.
Yeah. So for a licensed dealer, that's part of their requirements are to provide some sort of lock to those purchasing from a licensed dealer.
Okay. So if someone's buying at a gun show or handing off as a gift, that's not a requirement, correct?
That would be different. These types of private sales wouldn't necessarily be subject to that requirement of having the storage device, but for licensed dealers, that is the case.
But then the storage device, the safe storage device, gun lock, safe, whatever, is required in any home or other environment where children could be reasonably expected to be present.
Right. Locking your firearm up through either that gun safe or making it inoperable when children are likely to be around. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And the background check aspect of things too, that's with the licensed dealers as well. Correct.
Sorry, what was the question there?
Sorry, the background check aspect of things too. That was part of the law as well as the.
Yes, the expansion to background checks
Yeah.
And the goal there is to make it more difficult for someone who is prohibited from having firearms, to make it more difficult for them to complete a purchase and get access to firearms.
Including someone who had, is now the subject of an ERPO.
Correct.
Court order. Great. Thank you so much for addressing that. Thank you for the person who submitted that question. Are there any, I think we probably should start wrapping up. So I think it would be great to hear from each of you with your final thoughts, messages to people in this holiday season and year round, and your hopes around firearm safety and injury prevention. So Sarah, would you like to go first?
Sure. My thought and my hopes with a lot of this is that we can really equip everybody to feel really comfortable talking about it and asking about it. This really doesn't have to be controversial. It doesn't have to be derisive. It doesn't have to, cause I think when, like what Cindy was saying with, really thinking about just safety aspect and safety from, toddlers up to adults and just how can we keep people safe because we like them so much, and what are some things that we can say. So just really normalizing conversations. What we've told our families and people we work with is practicing it really does help, and it really does, kind of make a difference if that's something that seems really awkward to you to be, talking to another parent of, your teenagers, friends. How do I say that without sounding judgy? Or how do I say that? Just give it a quick run in front of the bathroom mirror, and then you feel a little bit more comfortable about it, and keeping it just on those positive notes, and sometimes what we've said is sometimes just that normalizing of assuming that everybody does it safely, that even if I'm not storing safely, if I hear another mom say like, well, I'm sure that you keep your, all your firearms locked, I'm probably going to go, of course I do. And even if I don't, then I'm going to go do it. So just getting that more normalized, that kind of public health approach, that this is absolutely something that we can talk about and hopefully make some change with that.
Thank you so much, Stephen.
Yeah. And so before I end with my concluding message, I realized the person was also asking about this specific law. So I just wanted to give the citation so they can look it up. It's
Great.
Michigan compiled laws. It's section 28.435, which is the requirement. So I guess my final message being the theme that's at the center of everything we've talked about today, obviously, is safety. We all want to be safe. We especially want that for kids. So what's encouraging to me is the extent to which safety is becoming the focus in Michigan with, the work of Cindy and Sarah around storage, as well as other interventions throughout the state. And as someone whose work is mostly around policy, I'm encouraged by Michigan's laws, which were implemented with the goal of increasing safety. They're informed by research, and importantly, something I didn't mention is that these are measures that are broadly supported by the public, and that includes gun owners. And policy is not a magic wand to address, all of the issues that we face, but it is another tool that we have to try to keep people safe. And the fact that these tools are available in Michigan now is something that I find encouraging.
Wonderful. Dr. Ewell Foster, you get the final word.
Oh gosh. I'm going to end where I started, which is to wish everyone a magical, wonderful, joyful holiday season. I hope that everyone listening will just do one thing. Do one thing when you get off to make sure that your house is safe for the people who are coming that you love. So maybe it's just check. Just check and see if there's anything under the bed. Just check and make sure that, grandpa's rifle that we inherited is, locked. So just, take a few minutes. We talked about being able to get safe storage resources through law enforcement, but you can also get them at many hospitals, at health departments. We really are trying in the state to make these really easily accessible for families. There are tax breaks for getting them. So with the new legislation, so I hope everyone will find some time to do something. Yeah, and I think the last thing I want to say is that, I'm just proud of what we're doing today and how we're bringing in so many different ways of thinking and different approaches to this issue, right? We didn't start with a lot of statistics, but firearms are the #1 cause of death for kids in America, and that's just completely unacceptable. And it is through pulling together a lot of really smart and passionate people. And honestly, everybody in our community is smart and passionate and cares about this issue. So let's all just be a part of the solution. And whether that's working on policy like Stephen, or doing tons of health education in the community like Sarah. I think there's a way for all of us to get involved and to elevate, lots of different perspectives on an issue that is not controversial. It's just keeping people that we love safe and here.
Fabulous. And I'll remind everyone watching that the U of M Firearm, so the Institute for Firearm Injury Prevention, has amazing amounts of resources on their website, firearminjury.umich.edu. And I think if any folks watching who are from areas where hunting is prominent wanted to learn more about the Store Safely project and how to implement it in their community, I imagine we can contact you through the Firearm Institute and learn more about how to bring that to their area. But lots of resources on the website around safe storage, around the ERPO law, red flag law. So please do check out the website. You can also sign up for their email. You can follow them on LinkedIn. And thank you also to MICHR for being part of this and for funding the Store Safely work. So thank you everyone for watching. We're going to have this video available on demand on several platforms, and please do share it. And everyone have a wonderful holiday.